Hello, everybody. Welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. I'm Nick Palavito. I'll be one of your host and moderator today. And today we have a very special guest that you've seen on LinkedIn a lot. As a matter of fact, he has a lot of followers on LinkedIn. And I see his post a lot. And the last post apparently created a lot of firestorm, and I thought it was a very reasonable question. So since a reasonable question was posted, I figured we'd bring the reasonable man on to ask and answer the question, and he's no more than Simon Ateba. Simon, welcome to the media show on the Pod TV network. Well, since you're new on our network, we have our own channel on Roku, Amazon Fire, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and we're going on TikTok. We're just finishing up our paperwork on TikTok. Tell us a little about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do. So turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, Nick, thank you for having me on your show. I've not done interviews for almost a year now. I've been avoiding them. I just got exhausted. So my name is Simon Ateba. I cover the White House here in Washington, D.C., and I publish the Daily Letter. I used to publish Today News Africa. I'm still publishing it, but migrating everything to a great infrastructure. So that's what I do every day. You see me on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and social media, and on our website.
Okay, and it sounds like you have an accent. Are you from the U.S. or where are you from?
Yeah, so I was born in Cameroon, and I spent yes, I was born in Cameroon, but I live in Washington, D.C. now. I spent a few years in Nigeria, so I feel like I belong to Nigeria, I belong to the U.S., and I belong to Cameroon also. Okay,
and you live in Washington, D.C. right now?
Yes.
Okay, so how'd you get into broadcasting? We're going to bring one of our professional broadcasters on in a minute. You may have seen him, Mark Lee, who's our journalist major. But how'd you happen to get into broadcasting? Because I do see you a lot on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so my entire life, I've not done anything else. I've done only journalism. I did print a lot. I worked a lot in Nigeria. I used to travel across West Africa. And I've been here for almost 10 years now, practicing my craft here and trying to see how I could contribute my part to improve relationship between the US and Africa. And if you remember last year, as a White House correspondent, I wasn't allowed to attend press briefings anymore because I had issues with the Biden administration for always trying to do my job. And so it's been challenging trying to do that. I went to court and I lost. I took the White House to court and I lost 2 or 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'm going back to court tomorrow. So.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, in my professional life, I'm actually a lawyer. So the thing is, I know a little about law, but I'm not a journalist. But we just brought in our professional journalist, Mark Lee, who's been a journalist like 100 years. He comes from a second generation family of journalists. And Mark, do you happen to know Simon? Because I figure all you journalists know each other.
I don't know Simon. I don't know Simon's a member of NABJ, but I'm a member, or at least not a member in standard. I need to pay some of my dues, but have been a member in the past of NABJ, which is the National Association of Black Journalists. And one of my good friends was a past president. He's a professor at North Carolina Central University, Brett Chambers, but I've known some of the other presidents as well of that organization. And actually, we were just talking about the role of journalism even in civil rights, because as you know, one of the places I work at is the Hayti Heritage Center, and there's an exhibit about Booker T. Spicy, who was killed after World War II, after he had a run-in on the bus, even well before Rosa Parks, and he was trying to sit on the front after having served in the military, and he was shot and killed, and there was a whole trial surrounding what took place in that tragedy, and we have that exhibit up now. But the founder of the Carolina Times, which was a major African-American newspaper, they actually did some research on him and all along those lines, because he was a civil rights pioneer, and that was one of the early Black papers or African-American papers in Durham, North Carolina, and he was a pioneer. And you'll find this interesting, Simon. They were trying to find some of the records, and as you know, some of the smaller papers and some of the Black papers are not necessarily on microfiche and all along those lines. But Lewis, who was the founder of that particular paper, and I'm trying to remember Lewis's last name and everything like that, but as the founder, he was seen by some as an enemy of the state, kind of like you went through, and all along those lines. So he was actually had some FBI files. So some of the old articles they found were in the FBI files. So part of this exhibit is actually something they found in the FBI files because, you know, they would keep track of people. And as you know, a lot of those are in journalists in the field of journalism that they consider to be kind of against the rule of the government. We've even seen that in this day and time, even with our current administration, because I just saw that Trump is thinking about suing ABC once again, but this time because of their coverage of his getting that plane from Qatar and all along those lines. So he's thinking about suing ABC and all in that space. But I did have two quick questions for you, Simon, based on my own knowledge and some of the things that I've been involved in, including one here at the network, because there was a time sometime back in the early days of this network that we had a show coming from Africa. It was called Mind Closet and all along those lines. And it was Brother Mike that did that. And he was in Nigeria. It was oftentimes very faith-based, but he did cover some of the conflicts that were going on in Nigeria, because Nigeria had its own version of Black Lives Matter, even though in that case it was black on black, but it was police against youth and all along those lines. So I do remember that he covered some of that. And then he also covered a lot of faith-based things because he had a strong faith base. I think that's fair to say. Nick, you knew him better than I did and everything, but I think he had a strong belief in faith and in spirituality. And I can't remember what his spiritual camp was and everything like that and everything in that space. But I do remember we had that show. So maybe we'll have to rebirth Mind Closet, or maybe we'll have to have Simon do his own show and everything like that, since I am the program director of this particular Pod TV. And I don't know if that's something you'd be interested in. And then the other part of that is, are you familiar with African News? Because my dad was one of the founders of African News, which used to have its bases here in Durham, North Carolina, and was associated with, to some degree, with Duke University and others. But he was involved in that space and was covering a lot of African news, particularly around some of the beginning revolutions and stuff like that, say in the 70s and maybe some in the 80s, because I was in school in the 80s at Marquette. So I do remember the African news, at least in this area, was around in the 70s, and I want to say in the 80s. And I think they branched off and might even be in New York and other places. But I do remember part of their founding was here in Durham. So just familiar if you're familiar with that publication at all.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm familiar with the African news, and my previous focus was mainly on U.S. African news. As you know, the U.S. has its office in Joburg, in Johannesburg, in South Africa. And so every day we have these press conferences, the Secretary of State doing this for Africa and the African doing this. And so even though I wasn't focusing exclusively on what happened in Africa, our focus was on what happened between US and Africa. Because I also figure out there will be the interest here to see what the Biden administration and the Trump administration are doing in Africa, what the African nations are also doing as far as the US is concerned. And so that has been a focus. But I like your introduction on, the press freedom and becoming the enemy of the state. And what I have realized is, because of the era we live in, the influence era, the influence age, we went from the Industrial Revolution to the Information Revolution, and now influence age, where journalists follow the followers. And so you can't actually be honest. You can't say things the way they are, because you are going to lose followers. You're going to I have lost 100,000 followers on X since the 2024 presidential election. And I lost those followers because many of my followers didn't really want me to be unbiased and be in between and be able to broadcast President Trump's rallies as well as the Vice President Harris rallies. And so I began to lose 1,000 people a day, and then 5,000 people. In the end, I lost like maybe 100,000 people. And I also lost money because my account was almost demonetized. And so I wasn't able to make the money that I could have made. And people don't really want to go through that. people want to keep their followers. They will want to see where the followers stand. And that's on each issue, including tariffs. If you tell followers that, hey, you are going to end up paying tariffs, you are going to lose followers, and it means you are going to lose money, you are going to lose influence. The White House Correspondents Association will not invite you to their White House Correspondent dinner, and you are not going to take those pictures. You are going to be banned from the press briefing. Right now, the White House, the Trump White House, is using the Secret Service to keep me out of the press briefing. And so when they went to court, they couldn't explain why. They said suddenly I'm a danger, to the Trump administration. I'm not, because I've never been arrested, I've never been accused, I've never been charged, I've never been. So no one really wants to go through that. I don't know if I will go back and go through that, because you end up losing so many things. You don't just lose money, you lose friends, you lose connection, you lose contact, you lose access, and so that's really hard.
Yeah, I mean, that's very interesting, because I did notice that I think, Mark, we put in for some press passes for Pod TV, but I was looking at press passes at the Supreme Court. I can automatically get in because I am licensed before the Supreme Court of the United States. Only 1 out of 100 attorneys bother to get licensed there. So I know I can go in front of the Supreme Court. I don't know about the White House because I've never tried, and I don't think our network's ever tried. So did you have your...
There was that notion originally that they had said that they were going to open it up, kind of what Simon is saying, to other journalists, not just the established journalists of what some people call the legacy media. I think I've heard that term used by some of the folks in the Trump and the Republican administration, but also to like some of these newer brands, whether that's social media influencers or others that are trying to do different kinds of coverage. So they did say that they were going to open it up to some of those, and that's what I had mentioned to you back in the day. And by the way, just so Simon can know, the gentleman I was trying to think of, because like he said, he was very much involved in civil rights and was originally from Enfield, North Carolina, but the founder of the Carolina Times, and he started that paper way back in like the early 1900s and everything like that. It was actually originally founded by the influential journalist A.L. Hurley, but the person that had the most active part of that family and all along those lines was a gentleman by the name of Lewis E. Austin. And it was actually his family that took over until the next generation decided that they didn't want to be involved in all in that space. And like I said, a lot of what they were covering, which is a lot of the efforts to integrate society and some of the civil rights stuff that was going on, whether it was Dr. King, who did his famous fill up the jail speech at White Rock, or whether it was some of the protests that were going on, including the sit-in movements and stuff like that. They were considered, as I said, enemies of the state. So they couldn't find their old newspapers, but they did find their copies of the papers in the FBI files. Because we know whether it was Hoover or some of Hoover's predecessors, they were definitely keeping track of people in the civil rights field, and would oftentimes be collecting stuff, whether it was newspaper articles or letters or other ways that they would be spying on folks. And that was even under the McCarthy era as well. So we know that the government in one form or fashion has definitely targeted journalism in the past and everything like that. We've got Jacoby joining us as well. Jacoby is a game person and involved in the gaming space, but he is also involved, in my mind, in a lot of journalism, including social media journalism and all in that space. I don't know if Jacoby considers himself a journalist, but I hear him ask some very good and pointed journalistic-like questions. So I can't remember even what Jacoby majored at in his esteemed university, which I believe was UNC and everything like that. But sometimes we have citizen journalists, and Jacoby, I've never told you this, but I consider you to be a very good citizen journalist and all along those lines, because you do ask some very good questions, even what you were asking on Economics Monday and all along those lines. So as I said, even though you're a longtime friend, I can never always remember all of my friends' degrees and what their backgrounds are in that space. But I do consider you a citizen journalist.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Apparently, you just got approved to be a citizen journalist. But here's the question that Simon asked, which I thought was a legitimate question on LinkedIn. And frankly, it's a legitimate question altogether. It dealt with the tariffs. In other words, and the question was, who pays for the tariffs? And the Trump administration said China and the foreign countries. But technically, is that true? It's the buyer who pays for the tariffs. So the thing is, the answer was incorrect. Okay. And so you asked a legitimate question. And I like how you did it, Simon. Rather than just say, you're an idiot. It's the buyer. No, this is the way to do it. You did it right. You asked the question. Who pays for the tariffs? And of course, she came up with the wrong answer because she really didn't know. And I love people that come up with wrong answers because they don't know, because they know everything. And we know everything, we know nothing. Okay, so all was well and good, Simon, until it created a firestorm on LinkedIn. And some people were saying, get rid of the Simon guy. I don't care anymore. I didn't saw the threads. Man, it was like horrible. And so I thought, I found it to be amusing because I think this is kind of an amusing place to be. And so I invited Simon on, and he actually accepted, which I was shocked because a lot of people I invite on, depending on who they are, you got to call my PR person, what's your name? They ask who's Pod TV. That's what we're a small network. We only have 2.3 million viewers. Okay, so we're not like ABC or NBC, but still it's not bad. And our viewers are from all over the world. Now, right now we have everybody beaming in from Raleigh-Durham except me, even though it says Washington, D.C. I live in Barcelona, Spain. So I'm beaming in from Spain. And obviously on the previous program, we had people in from Canada, Bangladesh, Europe, and all over the world. So we do internationally, but we do talk about interesting topics. And even Jatobi brought this up with the former Comptroller General of the United States, who's on every week on our network, the Honorable David M. Walker. Who pays for these tariffs? Now, as a journalist, are you allowed to have any independent thought, or you just ask questions?
Thank you for having me on the show, and I prefer to be here than to be on other networks. I've been everywhere. I've been on Fox News. I've been everywhere, and I got exhausted because you have to. I used to have like ties, and you change the first tie and you change the second suit because you're having 3 or 4 interviews per day, and you keep repeating the same thing. Even I know who pays for tariffs. Walmart announced last week they are going to be increasing prices in 2 weeks. And they are not the only one. You go Target, and all of them will increase prices. And so the consumer will end up paying for those tariffs. But the question is, what do people believe? I know the Trump administration is telling everyone that China will pay for tariff. The press secretary just said it. But it's all a lie. The American people will pay for tariffs. The people in Washington, D.C., in Michigan, in New York, and everywhere will pay for those tariffs. But people don't really want to believe that. People believe that if the politician tells them this is the person who will pay for tariffs, they believe it, and it's really hard to convince them. And if you try to convince them, you lose them. And the social media networks don't really help because we now have echo chambers where people believe the same thing and they discuss the same thing and they believe in the same people. So,
yeah, it takes a lot to lose the Trump base. In his first administration, it took the deadliest event in U.S. history, plus a stock market crash, plus closing down the country, for him to lose enough of his people to not get reelected.
No, I would agree to that. But like I said, I saw Simon asked this question. We've been joined by Rick Rosner. For those people who don't know him, he's actually a former writer for Jimmy Kimmel Live and a former Mega Society member. I think he's retired. And he retired from the Mega Society. I don't know.
I just dropped out of that range.
Did you drop out of the Mega Society? Can you drop out?
I don't know. I don't think so, but
a lot of people don't even know what it is.
My brain may have dropped out for me as I get older. Who knows if it even works well anymore?
Yeah, that's good point. And we've been joined from Puerto Rico for Kim Calhoun, who also heads up our show, Timeshares. Are you going to be doing that show today, Kim? Hello? Kim,
I'm going to need some help.
Oh, that's what
so I think Mark is supposed to help me.
Yeah.
But if you could jump in to help a little bit, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, well, we brought in Simon. He's actually a Washington, D.C. correspondent. And the thing is, I saw him every day. I see him almost every day, but I guess because I joined his feed, because he brings all these good questions. But here's the reason I invited him today. he asked a question, which I thought was a completely legitimate question. Who pays for the tariffs? And he created a firestorm of hate because, because the thing is, the administration said,
That's a bad question.
China pays for it. No, wait. It's the buyer who pays the tariffs. So it's Walmart who's going to be paying for it. So her answer was, not unusually, completely wrong. But Simon was very smart. Rather than say, you're wrong, you're an idiot, he had posed the question, which was a legitimate question. And boy, they hated that question. Firestorm. Oh, I don't want to hear Simon.
Did it go viral? Did it go viral? Yeah, it did. I did the same thing. I did the same thing.
Excuse me, infamous. The amount of Trump hate that came out was like all over LinkedIn. It was hilarious.
I'm telling you, whenever Simon, I just feel like one side hates more than the other. But I pose a simple question and I go viral. Like it of course, about Trump, but you get this side, and then they all call me liberal, and I'm not any of.
Me too. I'm not. Yeah.
Well, in reality, I put a Trumper on TV, so
here's the deal: in the 1970s, conservative think tanks figured out that dumb people are easier to wrangle, easier to get worked up, and the current atmosphere is the outcome of 50 years of Republicans herding all the lunatics and loonies and idiots into one group. I'm not saying every Republican is a lunatic, but it's like, remember when we were kids, you'd buy concentrated orange juice and then you'd have to add water? Well, the Republican Party has concentrated nut jobs. Now, I'm a dick on the left. When I go on Twitter, I say horrible stuff, but there are far more dicks on the right because of this policy of herding them into one corral.
Okay, so I don't really know about that because I've been unfollowed and blocked by people on the left and people on the right. On the right, Meghan McCain, for instance, she blocked me. Kerry Lake, she unfollowed me because I said that she was going to lose the election. And she was losing it. We had seen the numbers come in, and it was almost evident that she was going to follow it. She was going to lose it. And I've been blocked by people on MSNBC and people on CNN. And so the base wants to follow the propaganda. They like the person, their leader, they want him to succeed, and they close their mind to the truth sometimes, and it's really hard to change them. And I know it because I lost 100,000 followers on X, and I know it because I ask questions a lot. If you go to my X account, you see my last question that I asked them. We had responses from 10,000 people, and many of those 10,000 people who responded, they were like, no, James Comey should go to prison. And okay, yeah, he should go to prison. It's what it is, but he has apologized. It's not sure. I'm not sure what he wanted to do. But so I don't think I lean more on the left. I think I lean more on the right when it comes to money, when it comes to culture, when it comes to so many things. But I can't disagree with the president. I can say, hey, the tariffs, who's paying for them? You're going to end up paying for them, and you end up losing people, and you end up having people attacking you. And I'm like, no, I don't really. I like blacks, I like whites, I like Asian, I like all kinds of people. Like, I'm not against. I don't see people. I see DI everywhere. I see them on blacks. I see them on white. I see them on Asian. Like, it's insane.
It becomes a propaganda storm. But you should join Rick's show sometime, especially if you get into political talks, because he's got this show called Naked at Night.
Well, it's two idiots yelling at each other.
Banter back and forth is It's like slapstick comedy, but the truth coming out of both of them. And
Except
the
it's
guy
more
is an
sad
artist
than
and he's
we,
painting and he
yeah,
paints Rick.
we
It's
wanted
funny.
it to be funny, but it's more sad than funny.
I
The
don't think
way,
it's sad. I think it's funny, but
all right, but I mean, a lot of this is the sportification of politics, where you're cheering for your team. You don't care if your team has players who are dickheads. You even enjoy it. It's like when you go back to the Jordan era Bulls, where Dennis Rodman, complete lunatic, very much enjoyed by Chicago Bulls fans, even though he was completely out of control. If there's a dirty player on your team who's full of steroids, you're okay. You're just cheering as long as they're on your team.
Yeah.
It's tribalism mixed with fandom.
that's a good word, tribalism. It really is. And I don't, the way I kind of judge all of that is you have Republicans, MAGA, and MAGA asses, like the really bad MAGA asses. But
Yes.
like the people that just are non-linear 100%, they're right. And you know what's pathetic is they have a leader. They don't even see this, that every time he does just something, they got to go, make an excuse for him. And the excuse is always Biden. And I'm like, Biden's gone. But this is what they recently did. And I'm like, it's not that great, guys. They go, yay, he dropped the tariffs by 100%. And I go, okay, are you that stupid?
No, 100%.
He's the one who jacked it up 120%. And it's right back after chaos, after stocks, people losing their jobs, their economy. It's back where it started. It's exhausting. And you think, yay? So I don't block anybody. I don't. People block me, but I don't block anyone. I hope they don't block me, because I like to watch what they do, and they get little red flags that I ain't going to do business with them. Because people who think that way, they're not very smart. They file bankruptcies all the time to get themselves out of trouble. And they get mad when I bring that up. But you know why? Because they've had to do it. So, but there are this is what I tell people. And this one guy who kept using excuses for Trump and saying how great and how much he gets done. I said, well, you know what? There are a lot of smart people out there that get a lot of things done that didn't have to file bankruptcy 7 times. So it's none
of that. We've had one moment of national unity in the 21st century, and that was 9/11.
Yeah.
In the week after 9/11, Bush's approval rating went to 97%, the highest of any president ever. And so we need to do the Watchman strategy, which is
not on my watch.
Watchman is we need to fake an alien attack against the United States. It'll bring us all together.
Well, it doesn't work. Okay, Rick, it doesn't work to have unity in the United States for this reason. The political
I'm going to go try to
raise money unless they get people fighting each other. So to do anything to create unity. No, if you try to create unity and try to get along, and frankly, it's bad for the media. We'd have nothing to report on if we didn't have the circus that went to town. So you got the circus in town, you've got this great big division, you have both parties fueling the flame because that's how they can go asking for money. They go, oh, you've got to stop the Republicans. I get it all the time. You got to stop them. The Democrats, send me money. Then the Republicans, oh, you don't want the Democrats to take over, you better send me money. So unless you have the division, the political parties can't remain in power. So as long as you have that, you can forget it. There's always going to be division because both sides are manipulating their sides for their own financial.
Well, just to point out,
that's the reason I live in the European Union. We don't have this.
Just a couple of things. One, the unity that you're speaking of. Yeah, we had a plurality or a majority that were unified.
However, we weren't truly unified when, of course, the president or our current president was the one who started putting out stuff against Muslims and Muslim Americans and actually African Americans when 9/11 happened. So we can't forget that and gloss over that, because then we can say we had a moment of national unity back with Jim Crow. Well, not really. We didn't have unity there either. So we have to look at these things and be honest about it. We can have and what you're talking about, Nick. Yeah, there's always going to be the tribal politics. There are always going to be groups that are going to try and divide. However, we do a lot of that ourselves when we choose a lot of selfish things more so than choosing to help another individual or to do right by another individual. So a lot of that stuff ends up being about us, more so us and our society of what we're built off of, more so than hey, let's all focus on unity. It's an ideal and it's something that we need to focus on. However, we've got to realize that we want the same thing. Our pathways to get there are different. And just because you're choosing you have a different idea of how to get there doesn't mean that you're a bad person on how to get there. So we've got to be able to navigate that. And that's where we come into our problems, where that pathway we want to get to the end. Well, no, you want to take my money. No, I don't really want to take your money. I just think that we should have a safety net so our elderly or our special needs are taken care of and not, abused. Oh, well, you want to have guns and kill everybody. No, I understand that you like having weapons. So that's your thing. I'm not going to kink shame. You enjoy it. So we need to go ahead and understand a way that we can balance and live together and stop at each other's throat that, hey, what you like is hating on me. No, we should all be against prejudice. We should all be against racism. We should all be against those things and stop thinking that, oh, only my side is against that.
Yeah, but we've been equally divided forever. The last time a president got more than 53% of the popular vote was 37 years ago. The last time a president got more than 61% of the popular vote was 205 years ago. So that the two-party system is built on division.
Yeah, Simon, do you still have access to the White House, or do you have any press passes there?
So they deactivated my hard pass, and I had to apply for day passes. But since Trump came to power, they've used the Secret Service to prevent me from going in. I suddenly became a threat to say, hey, I've never been charged. I've never been accused by anyone. I've gone to court once when I sued the White House. And so I've never been arrested for doing anything. And so it's been really hard for me to do my job. But I still do it because obviously I have an audience and they can see it when I ask them questions about the White House. I have 5,000, 10,000 people responding, because I also came to realize that we are quick to judge people. We are quick to categorize people, put them into groups and say, hey, these are white and blacks and Asian and left and right. And at the core, people are just people. They want cheap prices. I actually agree with President Trump on the border. For instance, I believe that he's done something great there. I don't agree with him on the immigration, grabbing people on the street. But we can all see that he has some result there. But I don't agree with him on tariffs. I don't agree on getting a plane from, Qatar. There are a billion things but the people who follow, we don't actually want to hear that. And so it's hard for me. 90% of the people who follow me are people on the right, including Trump, the president's kids. All of them follow me on X, the first son, the second son, his in-laws, his secretary of chief of staff follows me. 80% of the people that he has appointed at the White House follow me on X. And so when I post something, they end up seeing it. And sometimes I ask, do I need to be careful? Because I'm not going to get access. I'm not going to get access anymore if they read this. But I've not been able to go there. That's why I'm going to court tomorrow. to ask the court to compel them to.
Have you gotten into any Trump press conferences during this administration?
No. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
What about these people here in Congress in Washington, D.C. that are supposedly making the laws? Do you have access to these people, and do they talk to you?
Yes, I can go to Congress. Congress doesn't actually require you for you can just, all you need is to have be a journalist and have your identification. Unlike at the White House, you need a hard pass, which I had for years. And, I began to ask questions that the Biden administration did not really like. Then I had those challenges with the press secretary and they kicked me out. And I was still able to get in with the day pass because, I didn't have a hard pass, but I could get in with the day pass.
So who do you think the straight shooters are in Congress? Who are the people you can talk to in Washington and you can ask them hard questions and they won't dance away from it? They'll give you.
I think on the right, I would say that we have Senator Rand Paul, who is, he's been saying all the good things about tariffs. He's a Republican, he loves the right, but he knows that this will destroy the Republican chances in 2026. He can see the writing in the wall. They are going to lose if they don't remove those tariffs, and they will lose badly. So President Trump's agenda will be completely crushed in 2026. And he knows that. He said that he paused the tariff with China for 90 days, but he's pausing them forever because he's not going to win. The GOP is not going to win those elections in 2026 if you have, if we enter a recession. So he's the person that I can count on. He also follows me on X. Almost all the people on the right who are like key people, they follow me on X. A lot of them cannot really be trusted because they have re-election, they're afraid, they may lose followers, they may lose contribution. It is really hard for them to do their job. Yeah, just a few of them. I can name 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 who can say the right thing. I know on the left you still have Bernie Sanders, but he support the Democratic Party, but he can still condemn some of the things that are being done to the poor. He's saying that the drugs should be free, people should have access, things like that. I think one of the challenges that I have with this administration is, what are you doing for the people? It's easy to say, you're kicking people out, you are deporting people, but what are you doing for the people? You can see the budget. What is there for the people? And so I don't know yet, but I know that everyone is afraid because now you lose followers means that you lose money. And if you don't have money, you can't do your job. And so journalists, instead of trying to set the pace to lead, they now follow what the crowd says. And if the crowd says we are with Trump, and then the journalists are with Trump. If the crowd says we are with Biden, the journalists are with Biden. So, and I think one of the ways that I do that is to ask them questions. And if you read me, most time when I ask questions, they generate hundreds of reactions and sometimes thousands of reactions on LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is not very good at reactions. You don't have thousands of people reacting to your post on LinkedIn. And because I feel like it's a mistake to judge people because of the color of their skin, their political affiliations. I don't think that is a good thing, because then you can have conversations with them. You prejudge them, and I don't like that.
So you mentioned followers and money, and I think most people realize, but maybe some don't, that if you get elected to Congress, you have 2 jobs. You spend 30 hours a week on legislation. You spend another 30 hours a week going to a special office building where you sit at a phone and you call people and beg them for money.
Yeah, no, I don't think you got it right. I think you spend 30 hours a week on Fox News, not on legislation.
Well, we're actually broadcasting on LinkedIn now, but We broadcast on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Roku, Amazon Fire, and we're just got our license with TikTok to do TikTok live programs. But LinkedIn, I found over the last several years, have been the easiest one. We've been thrown off YouTube, Facebook many times, okay, and for reasons that we're not even sure of. I'm serious, so we'd have this big following, and then Facebook would go like this, destroy us all. I mean, just destroy our whole following. And I'm just going like, you got to be kidding me. And that's part of the reason we have these multiple distribution outlets, Simon, is because this way, not one distribution outlet can control us. So YouTube's done the same thing. As a matter of fact, I think we have one strike on our network right now for something, again, I don't know about, because we have 50 shows that run through the YouTube system. And YouTube sometimes will vaporize us. The one group that has never vaporized us has been LinkedIn. And we're broadcasting on LinkedIn right now. They've actually been pretty good. I believe they're owned by Microsoft right now, and Microsoft tends to leave them alone. Yeah, what's your thoughts, Rick?
It's the algorithm. It's like, that the NSA monitors, phone traffic in the US, and they're looking for certain words that, that it starts with a robot looking for words. And then if the words pop up in a phone conversation, then a person gets called in to actually listen to the conversation. It's ditto for YouTube. YouTube has computers that listen for words like election fraud, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and the computer thinks if those words show up, you're probably a lunatic distributing bullshit about politics or medicine or both, and then you get a strike, and then you appeal the ruling and say, no, we were saying that ivermectin is stupid, and then a computer says sorry and knocks down your appeal. And so a lot of times there's like no, maybe not even a human involved.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest challenges now, Elon Musk, he follows me on X also, but he owns the platform, and so it's hard because he, what happens when you own the platform and you align yourself so closely to one side, and can you still be fair? And so you have a lot of censorship where it's not enough to have people who follow you. It's not even enough to have for your post to go viral. You need to own the platform. And that's what the influence age is all about. And that's why I was able to code. I just finished coding using AI and YouTube and all the tools that we have now. I was able to code a platform that will be releasing soon. Because, the day the President Trump was being sworn into office, I just looked around him. The guy who was being sworn into office, he runs a social media network, Truth Social. The guy who was behind him, Elon Musk, he runs a social media network, X. The guy who was beside him, Mark Zuckerberg, he runs a social media network, Facebook. And the guy who was beside him, Jeff Bezos, he runs Amazon and he's trying to buy TikTok. And so all of them, they understand that they need to own the platform. It's not enough to go viral. You need to own it. And we now have AI, we have X, we have all those support that allows us to code those things. And I believe that Nick said it best. LinkedIn is still, for now, is still one of the best. They suspended my account just a few months ago when a few people on the right reported my post and asked them they need to kick me off LinkedIn, and so they suspended me for a few hours. But I was back within a few hours, and so
I like this guy. He keeps getting kicked off of things. You need to come to our network.
You mentioned
I just started. I got mad at Facebook and LinkedIn because LinkedIn kicked Mark off, and he had like 20,000 viewers. He worked really hard to get there, and they just knocked him off and never would let him come back. And Facebook, Nick and I get into jail all the time, but I built our own platform. It launched. It's not as like robust as Facebook yet, but as I get money and can develop it a little bit better, it will be. And I've just developed a system that will be similar to TikTok, that because TikTok is getting everyone gets a strike every day for a word they say. Do you know they're not allowed to use the word murder? They're not allowed to use the word female. They're not allowed to use the word guns. They can't. I mean, it's a media, and you can't use any words to tell a story. You have to, and it gets very confusing. And I'm like, and then everyone I talk to that has like 250,000 to 1 million subscribers, which I know a few of them. They all fear that it's all going to be taken down real soon. And some of them do get taken down right in the middle of their show, down. And so I'm like, you know what? I've had this. If I get a little bit more money, I can finish that platform. And I know those guys, because they're so sick of it, like every word is being measured, that they will come and bring their subscribers. So I've got to finish it, because I'm not in it for the money at this point in time. I got to have money to fix it, but I'm in it because I'm sick and tired of the censorship that is happening to not everyone, but to some people. Yeah, I'm sorry, Rick. Go ahead.
That's all right. So, Simon, you mentioned all the media billionaires lined up behind Trump. So fascism is a fairly new word. And it wasn't a bad word when fascism was created in 1922. People didn't know how bad it would become. 1922, Mussolini takes over Italy, and they said he makes the trains run on time. And fascism, fascia is this old Roman symbol of a bunch of twigs bundled together, and the twigs bundled together are stronger. And fascism was a partnership between a strongman government and business. And people are saying, this is going to be great. And that was before fascism killed 100 million people in World War II. And in the US, we're seeing that old sense of fascism, like every business is lining up behind Trump, because if you don't, you're going to get your business ass kicked. But now fortunately, Trump's kind of a dope, so he's been screwing things up. So he's been kind of losing some of his billionaires.
Well, we do know there's going to be change, and we also know there's going to be excitement in Washington, D.C. When several years ago on the network, I was telling our network people, I said, hey, you got to be really careful. It looks like Trump's going to be elected again. And I got all this, oh, no, the Democrats are leading in the polls, blah, blah, blah. I said, not the polls I was putting in. We actually ran a LinkedIn Pod-TV poll, and it kept showing Trump winning by huge margins. And I said, look, I'm just saying it doesn't look very good for you guys. And lo and behold, Trump won.
And I was yelling at you the whole time saying, no, the polls are wrong, that she'll do fine, and I was wrong.
Yeah, but it was our LinkedIn Pod-TV poll that was actually more correct, because the thing is it showed Trump winning, and then, of course, he won. So I moved to Barcelona, Spain, so I don't have to listen to this stuff anymore, unless I want to. And Barcelona here, every now and then you hear what happens in the United States, but for the most part, we have a very good way of living. First of all,
you're sitting out at a cafe sipping sangria and having tapas.
Yeah, that's basically correct. Right now, downstairs, people are sitting in the cafes eating tapas, and they can care less what happens really in the
Nick, how long have you been there?
I moved here September 19th, and I got residency status. I had to fill out a lot of paperwork and stuff, so I don't have to leave, although I'm going back to the United States in a couple weeks for a couple weeks. Then I'll be back in Barcelona. So because we just bought a house down near the beach in Badalona. So this way I can hang out in the Mediterranean and think about all of you guys in the United States and all the problems that you have over there. Because every day, I knew when this happened, the circus would come to town. And then the thing is, it would always be something great for the media to report, because there's always going to be a circus, and it's guaranteed on a daily basis.
We had the dumbest circus thing happen 3 days ago where James Comey, former head of the FBI, is walking along the beach. He sees some seashells arranged to form the numbers 8647. He tweets it. And I think he thinks it means, 86, kick out, Trump from office, because it was 86 somebody from a bar. That you kick them out for being drunk and unruly. But then like MAGA goes crazy and says, no, 86 means murder. And so Comey gets hauled in to talk to the Secret Service. All the MAGAs are yelling that, he needs to go to prison, which is ridiculous because MAGAs, if any, know what 86 means, because most MAGAs have probably been kicked out of a bar.
Rick, it's just a manufactured outrage.
Yeah.
That's all, because MAGA didn't say anything when they sold, and you can still buy today on Amazon 8646. So when that got put out, MAGA didn't say anything. When Trump went on TV or went on an interview and said, hey, Liz Cheney wouldn't be a war hawk if they pointed the barrels of guns right down her, so we should point barrels of guns right at her. Yeah, they didn't say anything then. They didn't say anything when they brought a noose to the January.
No, they didn't say anything then. But I do have a question for Simon. That Simon's our guest and everything, and I want to know, and it's partially me teasing Simon and all along those lines. And I had to jump off to a meeting for the other cultural center that I belong to, and all along those lines. But Simon, I just want to know, since you're in DC and since you've also got those Africa ties, and yes, I am giving you a hard time. Did you go out and buy a Trump Bible, and did you go buy any Trump sneakers and everything along those lines? I just want to know if you went out and bought anything along those lines, because they were for sale, and I want to know if you went and bought one.
No, actually, let me show you something. I have.
You're going to show us a copy of this.
I have my own Bible. My own
Is
Bible.
that a Trump Bible?
It's not a Trump version.
I don't like. I like President Trump a lot. I like President Biden. I like Vice President Harris. I'm not like against the person. But I won't buy a Bible because President Trump is promoting a Bible from China, which is, to say, what about tariffs? If his Bibles are being made in China, people are going to spend more to buy them. And so I'm not so when MAGA attacks me, I'm not anti-President Trump. I'm not I think the problem I have is they want me to choose. They're like, Simon, we know you. You're close to Tucker Carlson. You've been on the show. You have hundreds of thousands of people following you on X. I was having 700,000 people following me, and I lost 100,000 because of the election. Only because I decided to be in the middle and say, no, if the vice president is having a rally, I'm going to broadcast it. If the President Trump is having a rally, I'm going to broadcast it. I won't, I don't need to choose a side. And because of that, I lost so many people. And, it goes to show you how, where people stand. People don't really want you to be in the middle. No, I don't have a Trump Bible.
No Trump Bible for him. No Trump sneakers for him. He's going to leave that alone and all along those lines. By the way, Simon, just out of curiosity, because you did cover a lot of Africa news, and we do have World Edition. We'll have to get you, and I have to get your email from Nick so that you can jump on those calls. And like I was being very serious when I said we need an Africa show on the network and everything like that. But what are some of the stories, and I know we've only got a few minutes to go, that we are missing from the continent of Africa? And I know it's made up of many countries, so we're probably missing many. My dad actually worked in Eritrea for a minute, and I know there was that whole Eritrea-Ethiopian war and everything. But what are some of the stories that we might be missing in the U.S., and particularly here on Pod TV?
Okay, so to me, the biggest story now is AI. And because all those data centers, AI is growing, everyone is using it, is going to determine the future. But only 0.1% of those data centers are in developing countries. So all of them are in the West. And so that's what we determine what AI, who wins AI. And I think, a lot of people are not paying attention. I just said I just developed an app. And I did it mainly using AI. It's not like you just say AI, do an app for me. They won't do it because you need to understand AWS, EC2, Lambda, and all those things to connect them. Because I came to realize that you need to own the infrastructure. If you don't own the infrastructure, you end up using YouTube, you end up using LinkedIn, and they can kick you out anytime, even when you have 600 or 800 or a million people. And so I think AI is going to be the biggest story in the next couple of years because the investment is being done here and they are not owning anything there. And AI will determine the way we do things, the way we build cars, the way we treat people. And just to also answer that question, when President Trump is distracted by the tariffs, one of his biggest, and I think that's if he loses that war to China, it is going to be worse than anything that he achieves. He has one job to win the AI war, and if he wins it, the US is going to continue to be the most powerful country in the world. If he loses it, then China will take over. And so in Africa, investment is not being made there. And then I'm not talking about wars and all this stuff happening in Sudan, in all those places, because usually when people talk about Africa, it's always about, those things and people being killed, the civil war in Sudan, the civil war between Rwanda and the Congo. I can spend a whole day talking about those things. But whereby investment, whereby what we change people's lives, whereby the AI that we allow people to, we change medicine, we change science and technology, we change the way we do things. And I think that they lack and they're not paying enough attention to that because of where those data centers are being built.
That makes sense. We're going to have to get you to invest with Jatobi because Jatobi is doing a lot of that similar kind of work here in the States with his gaming centers and things like that. But I'll let him tell you what he's doing versus me trying to play his middleman. So Jatobi, sounds like he needs to get some of his African investors with you and some of the things you're doing. So talk to him about what you're doing because you're in that AI space as well.
Okay. I mean, we can always talk off air on that. I mean, that's not a fun topic for everybody to sit and listen to. So we can always talk on air, off air about that stuff.
Fair enough. But yeah, he's involved in some of that similar space, doing some work with the youth and everything. How are the youth being treated in Africa and everything like that? Because I did mention the one thing I know about Africa was the whole Black Lives Matter thing that was taking place in Nigeria. And it was black on black versus black on white or crime to crimes. But how is that? Is that still going on? Because I remember that was something that Mind Closet talked about when they were in business with us. And that was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it's subsided a little bit. Nigeria had a new president, Tinubu, who, I know very well. He went to see the Pope yesterday. Everyone is going to see the Pope. Vice President J.D. Vance also went to see the Pope. The Secretary of State went to see the Pope. So it's changing now, but the economy is bad. So this economy is bad. And the U.S. has such an impact on those countries. When everything is destabilized in the US, when there's chaos and, all the things happening in the US, it affects almost the entire world. And so usually, I remember the first time I heard fake news, like people knew news, journalists, they don't always tell the truth. But when President Trump began to say fake news, and I began to hear people in Africa and everywhere say fake news. So the US has that huge impact on, the world, and everything that happens here ends up affecting people across,
Yeah. And yes, we do, because we are the world's largest economy, but we're also the world's largest people that are out of time. So I thank our special guest, Simon Ateba, who's in Washington, D.C. from Cameroon, where he's reporting on what goes on in D.C. and, of course, our viewers in the United States and around the world. And we'll see you next time on the Media Show on the Pod TV network. Bye-bye.